Customers Matter is a podcast about customer-centred, omni-channel marketing in an age of digital disruption, mobility, and the Internet of Things. It's hosted by John O'Neill, a management consultant and founding owner of Commotion, an agency specialising in customer experience design and delivery.
All right, well, Mel, we're underway. Welcome to Customers Matter. Can you tell me, first of all, a bit about your job here, your title, your role, and where it begins and ends?
Okay, so I've got two titles, COO for the group and MD for the Australian business. Where it stops and starts is a complete unknown to me and most people around me. But effectively, I run Australia, both corporate, leisure, travel, and all the other businesses in between. And I'm part of the senior leadership team for the group that kind of look at the long-term strategy for Flight Centre.
Tell me a bit about how you got into travel, your journey to the top of what I think is one of the most successful businesses really in the history of Australia. And what's that path been?
Okay, so I've been here 29 years at Flight Centre. I started as a 21-year-old. I would be what would you call the typical recruit for a Flight Centre, particularly in the 80s and 90s. I'd been at uni, gone and lived overseas for a year or so. I actually did psychology at uni, came back and went, oh, what will I do? Saw an ad in the paper for Flight Centre, went, that'll do for a while. Went in, got it, and here I am 29 years later. What's happened, though, during those years is that I started as a travel consultant, team leader role, area leader. I kind of went into lots of different opportunities as they came up. Either I was generally asked to do them, things that I'd never done before. So I kind of have had, I call it 7 careers within the one company, which has meant, by the way, that it's actually made it quite easy for me to step into the MD COO role because I've literally almost run every aspect of the company just by purely, we have a view in Flight Centre, if you're successful in one place, you can be successful in another. So even if you know nothing about it, I've suddenly been given IT, for example, thinking, oh, well, you know what you're doing. So
those 7 different careers, what was the shape of each phase? And what did you do in each phase? Obviously, the front line, clearly.
Yeah, I did the front line for about 7 years, working in shops. And to be honest, it's one of the best experiences I think you can have in this company, anyway, is to understand what happens at the place that you interact with the customer. There's no doubt that has formed a huge part of my leadership thinking later on, if you like, was formed in those years. I've run back-end businesses. We have lots of different structures in this company, so it's probably too long a story to go through all of them, and they might mean nothing because of the words we give them or the titles. But I've essentially run a lot of product businesses, so the business that puts product on the shelves, if you like, of both our shops and our corporate businesses. I was doing that for a long time. So on the supply side, I've also been involved in things like the operational, as I said, the IT, the property, those kind of areas. So I've understood sort of most aspects of what it takes to get a product, put it in front of in the shop, in front of a consultant, and sell it to a customer.
You mentioned that your first 7 years working in the front line, exposure to customers has shaped your thinking. How has that occurred? What did you take from dealing with customers that now shapes the way you lead the business?
I think the understanding that no matter what you think from a big picture perspective, this is what happens at the micro level in terms of how the consultant has to sell it. And I must admit that's always on my mind when someone comes up with an idea going, I don't know if that'll work when it comes to the actual person-to-person interaction. But it's also about giving that consultant the best tools and the best support you can possibly give them so that they can actually make a sale or, more importantly, look after the customer in front of them. I just think it helps you keep grounded in the small things that you often forget about as you move through leadership stages in a company. So I still remember to the detail, my first ticket I sold, the first stuff up I made, those kind of things. And I think that helps create empathy, if you like, for the people who actually you're going to influence the customer and the consultant, the salesperson. So you're not being glib, if you like, about some of the decisions you make. That's why. The other thing is in a company like Flight Centre where culture is so important, that's where you see the culture at its kind of greatest. And there's no doubt, that family unit, which is our shop unit, is at the core of what we do. So for me, a lot of what I learnt there is, will it work in the family? Because if not, don't bother.
So that's kind of interesting as well because, Screw's been described by some people as sort of Australia's Richard Branson, a sort of a shy entrepreneur with, a very unique kind of philosophy. What's it been like working with Graham over those years and what have you taken from his philosophy and that experience?
We can't call him Graham for a start. We won't know who you're talking about. It's Screw. What's that been like? Oh my God, I could rock in a corner in 1 minute. No, look, it's been both fantastic and frustrating, but frustrating in a way that I feel has spurred me on. His most famous line is he walks into a room and says, "What the fuck's going on here?" Which initially you kind of go, but you know what? It's a conversation starter. And, I love that, the fact that he just pokes things, just tries to get you talking, and through that tries to get ideas. Like we also say in Flight Centre that Screw loves to throw grenades in and see what floats to the top. And to be honest, I kind of quite like that management style, because to me, no idea is a bad idea, you just mightn't be able to execute some of them. So Screw makes you think, there's no doubt about that. The way he goes about that is quite strange and unusual, often over red wine, but I'm okay with that. But the one thing that I've loved working about with Screw, which is Flight Centre, is just, have a go. Have a go. Give it a go. No idea, as I said, it's a bad idea. And I would not have stayed 29 years if I hadn't had that flexibility and freedom.
Now, Flight Centre over that 29 years has really evolved. And I'd like you just to cast your mind back now to when Flight Centre was young and a disruptor. What was it like then, and what drove it? What characterised the business?
It's funny, we've been talking a lot about the last 20 years. We're 20 years a public company on the 1st of December, I think was our anniversary, and we're talking about the next 20 years. And I always say to everyone, the heart of Flight Centre is exactly the same as when I started 29 years ago. The physical nature of what we do has changed radically. So back to that point, when I started, we were hated by the industry because we were transforming it, reshaping it, doing things that were, I think, actually illegal in those days. I'm pretty certain discounting travel was in fact illegal when I started, but we were doing it. And we were the first people to get the general distribution GDS system, as in computers, into the travel industry. We were the first people to put airfare boards on the front of our shops. So previous to that, unless you rang an airline or, did whatever, you couldn't find out what was going on. And I think what we did is we made it easy to buy travel by making it transparent and just out in the open. Even us putting shops in the multiplicity of locations that we did was about making it accessible. It was, not in these dark kind of cupboards in airlines worlds, in offices kind of thing. So it was exciting. So, we used to get booed at industry functions that only made you stronger. And I think, to be honest, that attitude then of being irreverent and turning things on their ear was actually part of what we just tried to do. To be honest, as we've got bigger, trying to keep that spirit alive has been one of our challenges, because as you get bigger, it is harder to be quick and agile and respond to things. And, you just end up, particularly as a public company, you've got so many other things to think about. So we're actually trying to recapture that, frontier spirit, if you like, but maybe in a way now where we at least have some money and resources on our side.
Well, that was my next question. What is it like now to be a market leader, and what does that mean in terms of what you can and can't do, and how you have to do things differently?
Look, small is good, big is good. And I often say this to guys who come and work in some of the other countries overseas and come to Australia, where we're the biggest part of Flight Centre. So being a market leader is great because you have more resources, you have already some sort of belief in what you do because of where you've got to, if that makes sense. But then it also has challenges in that you've got to get a lot more people on the journey. I would argue the thing I dislike the most about it, and perhaps that's my personality more than anything, is the scrutiny that it gives you. The scrutiny is good because you have to be prepared to be transparent and justify what you're doing, but sometimes I think we get a little bit scared of doing things because the scrutiny is there, stuff that I can't be bothered because I'm going to have to explain it to someone. So the ability to be risky is still part of our DNA, but your ability to take bigger risks is, to be honest, the one thing I find challenging about being part of a bigger public company, I will say.
Could you describe the scale of Flight Centre today? Because I think a lot of people may not be aware. They've got a sense that it's kind of ubiquitous, but I don't think people truly appreciate the scale of it.
Well, as I said, when I started, there were 20-odd shops and however many people, I can't even remember. We have something like 18,000 people. We operate on an equity basis in 13 countries throughout the globe. We have leisure travel, we have corporate travel, wholesale. We also have other brands that don't even operate in travel, be it education, colleges, bikes, etc. So I think we joke about not knowing how many shops we have, but we actually don't know how many brands we have, but we have a brand count-off regularly. And last time, I'm pretty certain we're up to about 42 different brands, of which probably only about 60-70% are in that core travel category, but only about no more than about 8 or 9 are actually, the leisure travel. So we aren't just Flight Centre. We are so much more than just Flight Centre, the brand.
What's it like facing some of the biggest global disruptors in travel?
It's fun because I actually think some of the disruption that's happened in travel recently, and particularly in the digital space, you look at the Ubers, the Airbnbs, has actually forced us to go back to some of our roots of being a little bit disruptive ourselves. And I actually think we now are trying to get back to being a disruptor of ourselves as opposed to just the industry, because we are the industry now. So, and one thing that's actually, I've done a look at some of these businesses in detail. I actually think they resonate with actually what we do. It's all about person to person. I mean, you look at the Airbnb and Uber models, they claim they're, just the connector between the driver and the customer, or the host and the guest kind of thing. And we have had it for years now, a discussion around we want to be the world's biggest and best person to person travel retailer, because we want to connect the customer with the right consultant or the right knowledge base or the right product. So actually there's a lot of interesting things that they're doing that I think has helped make us even go back to being a little bit more disruptive. So no, I think they are to be admired and learned from. Is that the right English? Learnt from, just as much as you might go, we don't look at them as stealing our business. They've actually just made the industry bigger and better.
Do you see any of them as the greatest threat? I mean, if you looked at Expedia, Airbnb, even Google, others, I mean, who do you think poses the biggest threat?
I don't think of them as threats, because I'm not sure that's a productive way of looking at business. They are competitors in some segments, but I think a lot of those guys, as I said, have made us think harder about the type of digital capability that's in the world today, and how we then leverage that to actually give our salespeople, I call them digital tools of mass selling capability. So they're not a threat if you look at what you can learn from or borrow from or embrace or work with them on. And, Google's a huge partner of ours, for example. And even the Airbnb one, we're starting to have discussions with them about how could our, two worlds potentially collide in a nice way that, rubs off on each other. And, those things might take years for anything to happen, but, I don't think it's productive to look at them as a threat.
You mentioned before that Flight Centre's just celebrated 20 years as a public company, which has forced you not only to look back but to look forward. Where is Flight Centre going, and what do you think the business will look like in 5 years and in 20 years?
As I said, I don't think who we are in terms of our purpose and our value or psychological kind of makeup will change at all in the next 20 years. I hope it doesn't. But physically we will change. We will embrace more multiple channels of distribution, so particularly online. We will go more mobile because that's just the way of the world. We will diversify further than we are now. Maybe not more brands within the travel sector, although watch this space, there's a few on the radar now. But we'll probably try and look to diversify in what I'll call adjacent to our industry. So one of the next big growth markets for us is at destination. So we send thousands of people to key destinations. Why not own, if you like, the products they're buying on the ground? For two reasons. Number one, obviously financial. We can get another sale and another bit of margin. But actually it helps us provide a better customer experience and helps create unique products for our customers. So you'll see us go more vertical in doing far more at destination. But the other thing you'll see us do is probably look where we think we can apply our model into maybe a completely different segment. Let me think of one. Home loans, borrowing, that, lending, that kind of stuff. So we think the model we have for our business model would work beautifully in that industry. It's a bit like bikes. You might think we got into bikes because Screw likes riding, and you'd be totally right. But to be honest, our model works beautifully in that bike world, and so we're actually becoming quite successful in that space by applying the Flight Centre business model. So that's what you'll see us doing, not necessarily growing just horizontally, but growing vertically and growing into more adjacent segments. But the other thing is we're very keen on becoming a travel incubator, an incubator of new technology and ideas, particularly in the travel industry. So we also want to become the business that people come to because they've got an idea that they think might work.
What are the challenges in the so-called age of the customer? I mean, you mentioned in many respects you were customer aligned at your buccaneering, pirateering beginnings. What are the challenges today in what is really a world where things are far more transparent to customers than they've ever been before?
Look, again, if you look at it as a challenge that the customer often knows more than you do in some instances of the cycle, you could say that that's a problem, but it's not really. I think you've just got to... I think what's challenging is that you have to spend more money to get to the customer because there's just so many more channels. So whether it's digital channels, whether traditional channels, people still watch TV, but they also go online. So now we've got to be in 3 places, not 1. So it's the expense that's giving us, or the cost, to continue to ensure we deliver on low pricing and value for our customers when you've got a much more expensive multiple ways of doing it. That's challenging because you've really got to invest your money in the right places to have the biggest impact, but allow the customer to make choices. So that's a challenge. But, like I said, when I started and you couldn't get any airline pricing except if you rang an airline, and many of them, now you can get it anywhere and everywhere. Again, I'd like to think that we look at that as an opportunity because does that stimulate the market and get people off buying a fridge per se and into buying a holiday. So if you look at it as an opportunity to get more customers, or more customers at different stages of where they're at, then I'm quite happy. But it's the cost base that's probably the biggest concern it's giving us.
Thinking about the core business of travel and accepting obviously that there is a diversification, what new services can customers expect as they look to the future of travel?
What new services? I think customers will get and should look for not just services and products, what I'd call hard products, the flight, the hotel, whatever, but also look for the other things and again, we'll be doing this. So I'll give you a good example. You make a purchase in travel and often in the back of your mind is a thought that will it go down in the next 6 months? If I buy now, will I actually rip myself off because of my timing of being organised? So one of the services we're looking at offering, and there may be a charge associated with that, is we'll provide a monitoring service that automatically monitors the price of the ticket you've bought. And if we can then get a cheaper fare that comes out at some point, and get you on that, there might be a slight penalty and a refund. But I don't know about you, but I'd certainly sign up and pay for that service because I'm getting someone else looking out for my interests. They're the sorts of things I think customers will be presented with. So not just necessarily the purchase of the hard travel product, but there'll be lots of interesting other things they'll be able to buy that will give them surety they've got the right product at the best price at the right time.
Final couple of questions. The first one, what keeps you awake at night?
What keeps me awake at night? I sleep reasonably well most of the time. Possibility. I'm the sort of person that I don't really worry about things because, to be honest, that's rather useless energy if you ask me. But what would get me up at night is if I can't stop thinking and I'll get up and start writing a few thoughts down. So to be honest, I'm actually being kept up with thoughts of possibility and what might be, exciting opportunities as opposed to issues. But I will say this, the only thing that is concerning me for our group and our company at the moment is in fact that original sales consultant. So what I started as, it's becoming increasingly harder for them to be successful. And, if I can't create success at all levels of the organisation, then, that actually worries me. The individual at the very front line needs to be able to be as easily as successful as it was when I started. I don't think I was any rocket science, but I did well. I want to make it that the average consultant can do well because we've given them the right environment, the right tools, the right products.
And so what does that mean you need to do for them?
Simplify their world. I mean, there's no doubt that travel has become far more complex in the last 20 or 30 years, which has a great ability then, or a great sort of situation. There's lots of choice for people. I mean, the amount of products you can buy versus when I started is unbelievable, and the pricing is unbelievable. But that complexity means the person who's kind of shopping on your behalf does need to know more and look in more places, with potentially less return on each time they make a sale. So we've got to make it easier for them. So, making their world simple, really.
And finally, thinking about managing a business in an age of digital disruption, what are your 3 tips for anyone in any industry trying to grapple with this?
Tips probably only 2 things really. Number 1 is don't resist the digital tools. If you actually look at digital as creating capability as opposed to cannibalising your business, it's actually quite opening in terms of thought-provoking. But the other thing is, don't underestimate people's desire to deal with people. We're very much social beasts, and travel's very much, I don't know about you, I travel to meet people, I eat. But, you know, I think if you think of digital disruption as a way of, as I said, mentioned before, giving your people great tools, better tools, for them to have a better relationship with their customer, then I think it's very exciting. And on the other equation, use the digital disruption to make them more efficient. You know, computers should be doing all the non-value sort of creation stuff and allowing people to actually do what they do well, which is converse with customers, make recommendations and look after them.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Customers Matter. We encourage you to subscribe and, if you like it, rate and review it. Head over to Commotion.com/podcast. That's KOMOSION.com/podcast.